we have to hear the voices of so many people, and we have to create safety in spaces so that people with different backgrounds and different stories and different opinions and different ideas can feel safe to share them, and we can allow ourselves to feel safe to listen to them and receive them. Because to me, that's the only way we're actually going to create a genuinely collective legacy and a future that works for all. My name is Jess Magic, and I am a artist, a ceremonialist, a songstress, and a lover. And what I do is I really go around the world and get to travel and create these experiences that allow for people to have intimate connections with each other through music and storytelling and call and response song experiences and embodiment, like really getting into their bodies, and so that they can get to know themselves intimately and they can feel a deeper sense of connection, vulnerability, and authenticity with each other, and that in that space also feel a more collective ability to tap into their higher self or higher intelligences. Some may call it God or spirit. I really, for me, love creating experiences that have zero dogma, but that really do create a sense of spirituality and a deep connection to our soul. What initially brought me to this event was this invitation from my brothers David and Aloka, and when they talked about this idea of collective legacy, without even knowing beyond that what the intention of the event was, the idea of a collective legacy really appeals to me. My passion is a lot around unifying humanity, and that doesn't mean not validating the differences, and because I love the uniqueness of every single human being, but I do feel like we're at a time on the planet right now where there's a deep, deep, deep calling for us to find, rather than the points of dissonance and the places that polarize us, the places that connect us and unify us. So this idea of a collective legacy of what is it that we as human beings who are alive on the planet right now are being called to create together, and how can we look at these circumstances on the planet right now, whether they're environmental or whether they're humanitarian, but what are those things that actually unify us rather than polarize us? And so that really was my main inspiration. And then the second thing was I saw it as an opportunity for us to create an environment that had more diversity than I often get to see in a lot of the gatherings I go to. So I get invited as a ceremonialist or as an MC or as a singer to go to a lot of different gatherings in my greater community. And one thing that I notice is a lot of the gatherings that are orientated around transformation and system change and global leadership tend to really be underrepresented in terms of a variance of ages, a variances of social demographics, a variances of races and cultural differences. And so for me, this felt like a moment in time where we got to change that from the beginning and do a little bit of work to put together youth with elders, with indigenous, with people from different countries, with people from the US, and just see what would happen in that space. For me, the best outcome of an event like this is that we build bridges, because I personally think of myself as a bridge. I think that a lot of people that would come to an event like this have the capacity, if they don't already know it yet, to really be a bridge into whether it's their neighborhood or their church or their mosque or their family or their city or their country, or their people, to be a bridge to start to represent a harmonious amalgamation of different opinions and different perspectives, and find the chords of resonance that each one of us can carry out with us. So to me, it's like, are we here and are we available to experience some kind of a shift that allows us to become more ourselves, then to become more empowered and more embodied as we become messengers of these codes, so to speak, for a new humanity and a new earth. And I think another piece that's an ideal outcome is that we are able to really start to find a sweet spot, an intersection between what has worked for ancient civilization and ancient cultures and tribal cultures and indigenous cultures, and a real sensitive understanding to the modern economics and the way that the world is working right now in technology, so that we can actually marry those things together. Where that can really find its point of sweetness is in the heart. So I think that the ideal situation in these gatherings is there's enough heart-centered talks and experiences and workshops and conversations and musical experiences, which I love to do, that allow people to open their hearts so that they actually can be available for that intersection point and that marriage. So that to me is the ideal situation for an event like this. The ideal outcome is that we really, really are able to open our hearts a little bit wider to become a little bit more inclusive. Something that I've been talking a lot about at this event is non-rejection, and looking at where, when we reject a certain part of ourselves, or we reject a certain part of our ancestry, or we reject a certain part of someone else's ancestry, that we actually create more of a feeling of separateness. And so if we can learn to be not rejecting the parts of ourselves that we don't like, if we can learn to embrace those parts, then we can start to learn to embrace other things that feel different or feel uncomfortable, and we can start to open ourselves to have more capacity to include more perspectives, and then we can start to feel safe and comfortable enough to start to listen more deeply to where we are more the same than we are different, where we are more aligned than we are polarized, and we can start creating things that rise from that fertile soil of alignment and similarity and unification rather than polarization. I would call myself an container geek, meaning I really care about the environment that we're in. If we're going to have transformation, the space needs to feel inspiring and safe for that transformation to occur. In my opinion, there is no space that's more safe and more inspiring than being in wild land, being able to have a conversation or sing a song while you hear a crackling sacred fire and you hear a bubbling brook running on the other side of you, where you actually start to learn consent, not by talk, but you start to have a relationship with the land and start to learn to ask, like, oh, does this flower want to be picked right now, or is it really happy just blooming and growing in its natural habitat? These types of spaces provide a whole other layer, a whole other dimension of wisdom and teaching that goes beyond and deeper than even what we can share from our minds and from our mouths and even from our hearts. And I'm in love with the heart, but there's something irreplicable about what happens to us at a cellular level in our nervous system when we can just feel ourselves breathing clean, fresh air and hear the sound of running water. It teaches us something that we've forgotten about ourselves. Being in wild land and in nature brings out the best of humanity. To me, freedom culture is permission. It's the full permission to just really listen to who you are. I get to listen to myself. I get to hear what's true for me. I get to feel what's true for me. And then I get to create culture through my expression, through my relationships, from that place of feeling fully invited into my own experience and then creating from that. So to me, that's what freedom culture is literally feeling like we get to know ourselves, we get to explore ourselves, we get to discover ourselves, and then we get to meet others who are doing the same thing and create together from that place without any boundaries beyond what is actually true, enlivening, emboldening, exciting, and nourishing.